All right. Today I have Matt Kuchera from JP Morgan Chase and Vet Pivot today. And I just want to thank you, Matt, for taking the time and responding to my message and responding to that call out to the veteran community to kind of give some positive vibes to the to our civilian counterparts and even to our veteran counterparts that are kind of struggling during this time of the COVID-19 outbreak and
Yeah,
having to be quarantined and having to be like, I don't really know what to do. And even like for some of us, been laid off. I mean,
yeah.
that's a real thing. So um, I want to get you to kind of start off with an introduction. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about where you came from, what you've been doing, and where you going. What's the next big adventure for Matt and for
Sure.
Vet Pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, thanks for having me, and always good to catch up with you, Brian. I come from the Air Force, right? So that's where I started off. So before that, I was a Pittsburgh kid, and found myself in a little bit of trouble, a little lost soul, and the Air Force gobbled me up and put some discipline out there for me to have. And 12 and a half years later, I decided, hey, you know what, it's time for me to walk away and put down some roots. I have a young family. I felt like I was ready, right? I had done a lot of education, a lot of leadership. I was a master military training instructor. It's the Air Force version of I guess, a senior drill instructor or senior drill sergeant, right? So I had trained, around 82,000 men and women for military service over a 5-year period. So from a leadership standpoint, I kind of got to see the petri dish of what I would do, if I adjusted this training event this way, or if I addressed the flight in this manner during this situation, how would that affect the dynamics of the group? And so I really learned my voice and learned who I was as a leader. And I applied, schooling on top of that. So I have a bachelor's in business administration, and I went and got right after that, went right into Purdue University and got my master's in information technology. Uh, while I was doing that, I also went to MIT and got some executive education in blockchain strategy. And now I'm back at Purdue doing my doctorate in technology leadership. So I'm kind of a glutton for punishment when it comes to, I don't really like to have free time, which is something we can discuss during this conversation. But I transitioned out of the Air Force, and I still actually had a month left on my data separation until my data separation, and I started with JP Morgan Chase, which is who I work for now. And so I had like a little overlap of a month, which is the dream scenario for veterans, right? You want to start that new job while you're on terminal leave so that you never have a gap in that paycheck. And whereas that's not always something that is manageable or something that's possible, I was very fortunate to have a lot of good people around me help me get there. And as a result of that, I decided in September to start Vet Pivot, which is a podcast and an online community where we share resources, we connect people with other people that we know. Um, think of it almost as like an extension of the conversation and a place to get the answers to all the questions from the transition assistance program that you didn't have time to ask because it's only a week long. Um, so it's been a lot of fun. The podcast has exploded. It's become this monster and evolved into an area where now it's become its own business, which was something I didn't even really have planned for it. I just wanted to have conversations where if I could help one vet, then it was worth it, But it's turned out to be a really good place for a lot of people to come to and get the information they need to hear some stories of, triumph over adversity from other veterans, or, to get some insights from industry leads on what they're looking for in a veteran when they're hiring them. So it's just been a lot of fun.
And I know you've been at JP Morgan, but why JP Morgan? What was it that drew you to that organization?
Yeah, so going back to my education piece of it and sort of some other stuff. So my grandfather was really sick, and he recently passed back in November, and I was really close to him. So he had got me into trading and playing the stock market and stuff like that, and to the point where it became a real big hobby of mine, and something I was really passionate about was the finance industry, which is weird because I don't do finance. So I work for a bank, but I'm not a banker. I'm a tech guy. So it's kind of interesting, but I still have that love for finance. But I picked, you know, where I was going to settle down after I left the Air Force. And that decision was based off of family and a couple other key demographics, like what companies were in the area. And I made my list of my top 3 employers that I would like to work for. And it just turned out that I was able to get interviews and final round interviews with all 3 of those companies. And I got offers from all 3 of those companies. So, it's kind of like when you're applying to a school, you kind of have your safety school. You have the one that you have a good chance of getting into, and then you have your reach, right? And JP Morgan was my reach. It was my number one school. It was like my number one employer. I had my eye on it. And the reason for that is it matched some of these things, the work in the blockchain field, the finance industry, the technology aspect of it, and how they're trying to, how they're branding themselves as a fintech company, essentially. And then on top of that, it's just a good place to work. I think one of the other things that plays into it is I'm leaving the Air Force, right? And the Air Force has 275,000-ish people in it, right? Well, JP Morgan has 300,000. So I'm leaving one organization that is large, right, and has a little bit of safety in that size of an organization. And I'm going into one that is also large. And it's easier to kind of carve out your little piece of that than it is to go into a small company where you have to wear several different hats, maybe 3 of which don't really fit. Another one is someone else's hat, and you put someone else's hat on and it kind of stinks or smelly or sweaty or whatever. It's just, I feel comfortable wearing my hat in my company right now, and maybe that changes down the road, but it was familiar and easier to navigate.
Awesome. That's fantastic answers, and I think that's true for a lot of us, especially you're looking in the veteran community. We're used to wearing multiple hats, and
Yeah.
if you get to an organization that's wearing just you wear just one, or you're focusing on just one particular area, that can be a strange transition for them, and even our civilian counterparts, even they're in kind of that weird space too. Of, well, I've been wearing
Yeah.
multiple hats in my current organization. I'm going to this new one that's like just focus on this one job, and that's all we want you to do. And it's kind of like a wait, what? You don't want me to do like 20 other things besides that one thing you want me to do? No, just
Right.
just do that one thing and you're good. Um, here's a funny question for you, and this is going to be kind of the topic that what has changed for you since all this COVID-19 has happened?
I mean, truthfully, not a lot. So I work it sounds bad. I know people are really hurting and really suffering, right? So, with that in mind, like it's not taken lightly by me, but not a lot has changed. I can do my job from home. I'm a salaried employee, part of the senior staff, for my line of business. And so for me, I work from home, my home office, which was something I was able to do before COVID-19 and quarantine life and all that fun stuff. Um, if anything, I'm saving money, because I'm not I had an hour commute to get to work, based on where I live. I love where I live, and I didn't mind my drive because it gave me a chance to take phone calls, to coach, to consult, to listen to other podcasts. It gave me time to do things when you're locked in that box that's going 80 down the freeway. But I don't pay tolls. I don't pay gas money. I don't put miles on my car. I'm not buying coffees and, going out to lunch. Like that stuff's not happening right now. And so I'm saving money, and I'm getting better workouts in because I'm waking up at the same time, but I don't have that hour commute. So now it's like, well, what do I do with all this time I have? So I don't want to paint the picture like I'm suffering, because I'm really, it's been pretty easy for me. But I do know from conversations I've had, with people on Vet Pivot and, people I've talked to just in my network, I know people are struggling, and I know it's a tough time right now.
Yeah. And so going on to what's been the hardest part of being in the banking industry, in the fintech industry right now in today's climate, because it has been so turbulent recently. What have
Yeah.
you noticed recent in that regard?
Well, I think what a lot of companies are doing, and they're smart to do so, is they've put freezes on change, right? So you don't expect to see any like new investments in new projects kicking off. What they're doing is they're making sure that they can still provide their services that they currently have that are already uh, free, open to the customer, if you will. So now it's a matter of switching gears. I think like times like these, the most important gear to switch to is how can we support other people that are worse off. So when you look at the company, they're doing, they pledged $50 million in resources to help people that are struggling with that. Um, you'd have to look it up. The article came out last week. Just look up JPMC $50 million pledge. Uh, and the company really leans forward on some of that social responsibility or corporate responsibility, whatever you want to call it, like reinvesting in Detroit, right? 100 or $150 million reinvested into the city of Detroit to help bring jobs to Detroit, to give that city something to to work with, right, and revamp it because it's been ravaged by uh, auto, automation, robotics, shipping jobs, manufacturing jobs going overseas. I mean, that really has been a very depressed city for a long time. And it's about time any company, invests in that. So uh, that has been the biggest change, is kind of the shift in focus is companies are going into maintenance mode on their current uh, initiatives. And then on top of that, they're investing in their communities.
Fantastic. So so we talked a little bit about quarantine. What have you been able to enjoy more since maybe being quarantined, or having to work more from home, or whatever the case may be for you?
Sure.
What's been more like, I get to do this more now?
Well, part of it's the workout, right? So part of it's the workout. I've effectively been able, like this morning, for instance, I did 5 miles. Um, Still woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:45. Got on the road by 5, and I was just gone. I was just getting after it, having a good time, being to myself, and that's not something necessarily I was able to do as easily when I was having to commute. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, my family's right downstairs. So when I take a coffee break that I would have taken if I was at the office, now I can take a coffee break and I go see my girls. I can talk to my wife. I can be there to give her a break, which has helped her out a lot in dealing with those little monsters. And so it's stuff like that I think, if anything, it's made things a little easier to strike balance in my life, because otherwise I would be sitting at my desk trying to get as much done as I could before I was like, okay, I should probably go home now. So it's,
Yeah.
and now it's more like, oh, okay, well, I can work on this thing, and when I get it done, I'll go take a 15-minute break and see the girls, right?
Yeah.
Or hey, I got this task done, I'll go downstairs and give my wife a break. So
Yeah.
it's been good.
Yeah. And kind of piggybacking off of that, what would you consider like your most nervous aspect of all this that's going on? And how would you be,
Say it again.
how what's been one of your most nervous things you've been dealing with? Like, what's been making you the most nervous recently? Um, and how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, I think what makes me most nervous is how this is going to continue to impact people. I worry a lot about other people, right? I worry about my family, obviously, but then on top of that, I worry about, we have a large demographic of Americans who, should they be faced with, $500 of some other catastrophic event beyond just their normal bills and budget, that they would not be able to afford that. So I think that I worry about how people are taking that, how people are handling this, um, the mental health aspect of it. That, so there are things about just basic humanity and just people that that's the part that I'm nervous about. That's the part that I worry about, is this will pass and we'll get through this, and there will be things that come out of this that you know will shape how we think about our money. It'll shape how we think about our families. It'll shape how we think about our physical and mental health. It's situations like this tend to make us stronger as people, but it doesn't make it any easier to to think about that. So um, how I can help others is really where my head's at, and I'm nervous about, what if something happens? I can't help people, and I can't get out there and give back, even at a social distance. So
And going to that point about the people that you want to help, um,
yeah,
what would you, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that is listening to this and watching this, and they're saying, "Well, Matt, I've been laid off. You know, what
yeah,
can I do? What kind of help is out there for me? Who
sure.
who can I turn to that can help me? Or what can you say to me that makes me like, this is really bad. It's a bad situation, but we're gonna get through it."
Yeah. So I mean, there's a handful of things, and this is by no means, the end all be all type answers. But if you've been laid off, obviously, step one, go apply for your employment, and pray that your employer paid into unemployment sufficiently so that they can be paid out. Um, the other piece of that would be to have faith in the system. Right? There's things that we say in the military, and putting service before self, for instance, is one of the core values of the Air Force. In order to put service before self, you have to have faith in the system. And it's really hard. It's really hard. And I'll make an analogy here. When I was a brand new airman going through tech school, I was climbing antenna towers. That was part of my job in the Air Force. As a brand new airman learning the job, you have to trust your equipment, and you have to be there. And one of the ways that they make you trust your equipment is you go up, and we're 125 feet off the ground, and we belt in backwards. So they tell you it's Superman. So basically, your rig has you attached to the tower from two D rings on your hip, and you're belted in backwards. So the tower is behind you, and you lean out away in a Superman pose. And the idea here is that it's teaching you that your equipment is there. Your equipment is going to hold you. It's not going to let you fall. It's got your back. Um, well, I slipped, and I started to fall, and then my equipment, and I was like, and my equipment caught me and swung me back into the tower, and I had a nice, crash landing against an antenna mast, and then I just kind of dangled there by my equipment. So what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is, yeah, I fell a little bit, but I'm still alive, right? I'm still here. My equipment did catch me. And when you have faith in the system, it doesn't mean that you're not going to feel it. It's going to hurt a little bit. There are going to be things that are going to hurt a little bit, but there's a system in place. There's people in place that are here to make sure that they guide the ship and get all this through it. So trusting that, and having some faith in that, can take and alleviate some of the stress and pressure that you're feeling and putting on yourself, make things just a little bit better. Um, and then the last thing I'll say is, look for opportunities to do anything. This is not a time for being prideful or to look at your resume and say, no, this is what I do. Just find ways to do anything. There's Fiverr, there's FreeUp, there's Amazon's hiring like 100,000 people apparently. So if you got an Amazon nearby, maybe you can go work, do an Amazon gig. There's industries that are thriving right now. Grocery stores need all the help they can get. There are ways to make a buck for sure at the moment, if you just need a few dollars to get by to pay the overhead, right? So those are just some ideas, some tidbits, and then, hug your loved ones and stay close. That's your support system.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people should be focusing on, you have your family still, you have your loved ones. Let's give them some extra attention, extra love, and say, you know what, I appreciate everything you've been doing for me. Now, I might need some extra support for myself. Now, I know you mentioned like the resumes, brands, and etc. Your personal brand versus your professional brand. I know that's kind of a hot topic for some people, and some people may not even realize it. So I want you to kind of dive into that just a little bit, and kind of give some people some perspective on each one and how they can impact your ability to find that next role, even in those times that we're dealing with right now.
So if I, help me out here, but your professional brand is essentially what you identify as from credentialing and what you went to school for and all that fun stuff. And personal brand is going to be sort of tied to your value system and what you believe in, what direction you want to go with that. So, your professional brand right now needs to be flexible. I mean, it's the best way I could
Very
put it,
true.
right?
Very
Your
true.
professional brand needs to be flexible. It's not rigid. It's something that is very much fluid and aligned with the demand of the market when it comes to jobs. Your personal brand, that's the more rigid thing, right? Your personal brand is your value system. Your personal brand is what makes you who you are and what you want the rest of the world to think of you as, or see you as. But I think that it's important to understand that you can still be yourself and true to your values, but that you can go do any damn job and do it well, right? If that job is cleaning toilets, uh, think of the story you'll have on the other end of it. Like, hey, I cleaned toilets for 3 months while quarantine was going on, but guess what? I got through it, and then I got right back to being a project manager. So it is what it is. I think we're in a time of flexibility, adaptability, whatever you want to call it, um, survivability. These are concepts that we should be thinking about, and less about woe is me, or hey, I had a hard time finding a project manager job, or this or that. I just use project manager because that's the field that I'm in. But um, just remaining calm and flexible is going to be the best way to get through, especially on the job side of this whole thing.
And so, like, you talk about, some silver linings. What do you see? Can you speak more about some of those silver linings that you might see, both on a global perspective from your role in JP Morgan, but also on the local, like national level, and even to your local personal community?
Yeah, I think silver linings are difficult to come by at the front end of something like this, but as you ramp towards the light at the end of the tunnel, you start to find some of those silver linings. Like, well, hey, I like what I had said before. I'm working out more. I'm saving more money. Like, those are some smaller silver linings, but you're also learning a bit more about how to value people. So if you want to think about like the last time America really had to face something, you can go back to the recession in 2008. Before that, you can go to 9/11, right? There have been times where we've been called as a nation to really rally together and support one another, and be calm in the face of adversity, resolve in the face of adversity, whatever, however you want to say that. But that's this time, right? That's this time right now that we're in. We're being asked by our leaders to do whatever it is that they ask, and understand that that's going to change from day to day, from hour to hour, minute by minute. That's a fluid situation. So instead of flying off the handle or freaking out because, hey, we're on plan C now, right? It's not what we're being asked to do. We need to come together and just play our part, do our job, whatever that is, and support those who've been elected to positions of leadership to lead us and to make the right decisions using the best possible people around them to formulate good plans. So I think that the silver lining out of all this on a national scale is that we're figuring out who has agendas and who really cares about America, right? And I think that's not partisan politics. That's just on either side of the aisle. You're finding out who has an agenda and who really just cares about doing the right thing. And that's important, and that's something to take into consideration on election day when that happens. So pay close attention to those leaders and some of the decisions that they're making, and weigh them against your personal brand, but also against what America's going through, and are they making good decisions? Are they steering the ship?
Great answers, and I really like that. And because a lot of this is about communities, how can we as members of society give back to our communities during this time? What would you say to somebody that's like, oh, I want Matt, I want to be able to give back to somebody, but I may not have enough money. Well, how would you give back to an organization or a cause that you believe in during this
Yeah.
time?
I mean, if it's not financial um, support, then it's more from a followership standpoint. So I'll go back again to social distancing and doing your part, staying indoors, staying away from gatherings of people. Do your part in that, and not becoming someone who spreads what's going on, and instead being someone who keeps it away from continuing to spread. So that's that's the biggest way you can get back to any community at the moment, is just by doing what officials are asking you to do, and being the you know responsible citizen and playing your part, your civic duty of listening to those officials, and having faith in their leadership abilities. um, Beyond that, I mean, if you have organizations and stuff that you want to help, there are some that are collecting food and supplies and stuff like that. um, you can also help out by not running to the grocery store and stocking up for World War III, right? That would be an important one as well. So, get what you need for a week or two, but don't sit there and stock up and hoard supplies. It's not like the supplies are not continuing to be made. Like, the things that are really important are still going to be there. You may have a delay in the supply chain as a result of COVID-19, but you're not going to have no supply chain, right? So it will happen. You just have to be patient and take what you need, and don't be the type person that consumes at the same rate as you might have consumed, or at a higher rate than you would have consumed in the past.
And you talk about social distancing because that is a hot topic. How would we stay connected when there is that talk of social distancing
Sure.
and staying quarantined and staying shelter in place? What's being connected mean during this kind of time period?
What's funny to me is that this question in particular, Brian, is one I've been asked quite a few times, and I think it's hilarious because we're in this time. It's not like the internet's gone, right? It's not like the internet's gone. It's not like people don't still play video games. It's not like people aren't still on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Like, if anything, they're on it more. So to me, people are already doing what they should be doing. And then on top of that, if you need more, I was just talking to a coworker about this today. Uh, Thankfully, my parents, they bought, I have three other siblings, so they bought the four of us each a Facebook portal for Christmas, right? No idea COVID-19, that wasn't a thing. But now I have this great device, and I can just call on Facebook Messenger, and I can call up my siblings. I can call up my parents. We can all stay in touch that way using this device. The point of that being, if you need more FaceTime, right, then just FaceTime people. that's that's what it is. That's what it boils down to. But I think also take the time to actually reach out to and beyond your circle of influence, your small circle of friends, and kind of go out beyond that into just your circle of inclusion, which would be people that you would normally associate with just through social media. Maybe take 2 or 3 calls a week and just talk to them face to face, FaceTime to FaceTime, Zoom to Zoom, whatever you want to call it. Just talk to them, have a conversation, use that time to get to know people. I have ramped up the number of episodes of Vet Pivot that I started recording just because I wanted to talk to people about what's going on, and I wanted to be there and let them know I still value them and I want to hear from them, and I have a little extra time. Let's have a conversation. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I know you've mentioned Vet Pivot. What other I know that's a big passion project for
Yeah.
you, and I love it. I'm a huge fan of that. And what other passion projects do you have going on right now?
So there's it's on pause because of COVID, but um, I really bought into and believe in the GORUCK mission. So GORUCK, for those of you who don't know, they make great bags and workout equipment. And when I say workout equipment, I mean like Muscle Beach type workout equipment, like go fill a sandbag and walk around with it on your back, that kind of workout equipment, right? Um, but yeah, they're just such a good company and well run. And Jason's a great guy, the guy that runs it, Jason McCarthy's is on the board for the Green Beret Foundation, and he's just a really down to earth good guy, and I love his mission. And they put on GORUCK events. So one of the things I've been trying to do is schedule through my Vet Pivot Nation private Facebook group, trying to schedule events throughout the year in different areas that I can get as many vets to come out and participate with Vet Pivot Nation, like as a team, as a group. And they can sign up through my the link that I have on my website for GORUCK, and they'll get a 15% military discount, and they can sign up for the event. And it's going to be, look, it's going to test you physically, but through that adversity with brothers and sisters in arms, you will find that mission, that calling that you've been missing as a veteran. We need that. And every now and again, you need that just to kind of recharge the battery. So you come out of that and you feel, man, that sucked. But here I am now drinking a beer and flip flops with my with my friends who also know what it's like to serve the country. And we can just talk about how much that sucked, or we could talk about service, or we could talk about whatever, but the key there is getting veterans together and doing something that's physically demanding and motivating each other to get through it. And it increases the feeling of inclusion. It increases the camaraderie. And it really just brings home the fact that you're not alone. You don't need to isolate, and that being a veteran is pretty badass.
Now, I know you've been a hot topic on leadership and being a leader. What would you tell your fellow leaders about being effective during this time period?
We were you had tagged me in a thread on LinkedIn recently, and I thought it was great. It was talking about leaders being, leaders emerging versus leaders stepping up. And I think through that thread, and I was talking to the author of that thread, and what we settled on was, no, leaders need to be present, right? So you already have leaders. They're already there. They're in place. They need to be present. There's no excuse for not being present. They need to communicate. So leaders need to communicate. So that's the other piece of it. Communicate to your people so that they feel informed, so that they understand that there is a plan, or that a plan is being worked, right? Because that's the other part of it. Otherwise, if you don't communicate about a plan, then there is no plan. Even if there is one, that's not what you're saying. So make sure that you're communicating. And then the last piece of that is make sure you're empowering people. And that's the one thing I wanted to drive home in that thread that you had tagged me in was, look, there's leaders that don't empower their people and they have to give orders. And then there's leaders that give intent. And through that intent, you are empowering and allowing people to have autonomy and to operate, without your direct supervision. You're giving them the freedom to operate and move laterally, and to be able to make decisions based on just the intent of what you want to have happen. You set a culture and a precedence for, hey, this is how we think, and this is how we operate, and this is what's good. And then you let them come up with the good ideas, which is much more effective anyways. If there's 1,000 people on the team and only one leader, then that's a problem. What you want 1,000 people on the team. You have guidance coming from that one person on, hey, this is the direction that we need to go. And then you have 999 people coming up with ideas on how to best get to that direction. So it's something you need from a leader, is to be present, to communicate, and to continue to give intent so that people have some lateral movement to operate.
And that really brought into my second question is what makes an effective leader during this period? And I think you really covered it very well with the communications part, with the, empowering your team members part, because I know a lot of leaders, they've been so focused on just leading their teams in a traditional office. Well, now they're not being able to be in that office setting.
Yeah.
They're having to be remote from their teams.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's also a different part of perspective that we as veterans can bring is we're used to not being around each other and leading those teams. We're used to having Jimmy that's 100 miles away saying, "Hey, Jimmy, I need you to do this, this, this." And you have that trust of Jimmy doing that particular task
Yeah.
up to the standards that you have expected. So, um, how does, being remote now, how does that change your perspective of being a leader?
So I think that's not much has changed. I think the one thing since I've taken on the role that I'm in now, I don't work with anybody in the same geographic location as me. So a lot of my work gets done with people that are all over the world. And so I know like what part of the world I'll be talking to based on what time it is in my day. And it's one of those things. I think just communication, taking time to humanize the conversation, because when you're not sitting there in front of someone, it's hard to humanize it. So really focus on spending that first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of a call on just, hey, how are you? What's going on with you? How are things? How's the family? Are you guys doing all right? Is there anything that's stressing you out that's keeping you from being able to do your job? Uh, you know, Ask some of those questions and be direct about it. Because when you do that, you're still showing empathy. You're showing a good, empathetic leader that cares about their people, that is still invested in their people, even though the mission has now become more digital. And that's going to be critical. And then just communicate with one another. Keep the lines of communication open.
So I want to, where can people go to connect with you to further this conversation, Matt?
Absolutely. So I'm on all social media platforms. Um, but if you go to ownyourpivot.com/welcome, and that will kind of curate your vet pivot experience and how you can engage me better, and how you can find me better. There's all kinds of resources and links there. So ownyourpivot.com/welcome.
Fantastic. And I want to wrap this up. Is what inspiring message would you like to share with our viewers as we close out here?
So it's always easy to see exactly what's going on at the moment as being the worst thing that you've ever been through, right? Or the worst thing that you could ever imagine going through. Um, but what's cool is to think that, okay, the last time you had a moment like that, what happened? You got through it, right? And that's kind of the way that you have to look at this. It's maybe the worst thing you've ever gone through, and you will get through it, because we're not given things that we can't handle. We're not given things that we can't come back from, and death is the only permanent thing. So if I'm not dead, I will get through this, and that's it's probably the best way that I can put it. I don't want to get too deep into the faith with people here, but honestly, just faith in the system. You will get through it. Remain calm and lead your families.
Wow, awesome. Matt, I really appreciate your time today and taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some time talking with me and kind of catching up and of course sharing your vision of what's been going on and how we're going to handle this and I hope our audience will take advantage of connecting with you both on a professional level and personal level
Yeah,
and just
absolutely.
getting those conversations going because it is more than just well, this is just how it's going to be and just you feel like it's too bad.
Yeah.
It's not, having that realistic conversation with somebody can really open that conversation piece to even further engagement. And I hope our listeners actually take advantage of this. And again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I appreciate you and appreciate everything you've done. And now that I look back on it, it's been almost a year and a half since
Yeah,
you and I first started chatting, and I'm like looking back and seeing everything that you've done. I've been like, wow, that's incredible. Seeing all of the work that you put in into your own transition, into your own career now, it's been fantastic to see. And I will, I will always champion for you as one professional to another. So, and I
I
hope our
appreciate that.
other network of awesome leaders, you know, open up that conversation with you. And I'd love to see this grow into something amazing. And again, my boss, Derek Shue, who started this idea, was one that really wanted to see, from your perspective as a leader inside of the industry and also a veteran, what kind of unique perspectives would we have? And what you've been saying today, fantastic,
Thank you.
awesome experiences. So I hope again others will take advantage of this time and reach out to you. And of course, if you need to reach out to me, I can be found as well online. Pretty simple explanation point there. So Matt, it was fantastic speaking with you. I look forward to further conversations, and I hope to see you down here in Atlanta at some point.
Likewise, brother. I appreciate it, Brian, and enjoy the rest of your time. Indoors, I guess the best way to put it. But we'll soon be outside and having a good time, and
Yeah,
hopefully I can get down to Atlanta and check out that beautiful baseball stadium they got down there.
I don't know. I'm a personal. I love our football stadium more
Okay,
because
okay,
it's it's
that's a nice
indoors.
feel
It's
too. Yeah,
indoors,
there you go.
so it's all cool, and you don't have to be sweating,
That's
when you're
right.
trying to enjoy your beer. So
That's
there's
right.
always that part. So hopefully we'll get back to our normal routine at some point in the near future, and we can get back to enjoying our daily activities as we usually do.
That's right.
Granted, today it's out. I'm looking outside. It's raining, and I'm like,
Yeah, I know.
I'm
It's
glad I'm not outside. So, but again, it is a trying time for everyone, and it isn't the end all be all. Like you
right.
said earlier, we've been through worse, and we're gonna get through this again. So,
That's right.
um, I hope our audience enjoys that perspective. And thank you again, Matt, for your time. And I look forward to further having another one of these fireside chats, I guess you could say,
Cool.
is you can call it. So, um,
Perfect.
man, fantastic calls, man. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Have a good day, Matt.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.